Hi, Jeff.
Hey, Meesha.
Welcome to another episode of North Atlanta Real Estate with Jeff Ahi and Meesha Rawal.
Yeah, so today, why don't we take a look at the purchase and sale agreement of the Georgia Association of Realtors. It's Form F201. So this is the one that most of the buyers today are going to be filling out with their agent, right? And so why don't we take a look as the market is shifting a bit and softening in most areas, why don't we talk about how that might affect the purchase and sale agreement as we fill out sort of the high level. We won't go into the boilerplate that's there. You can always reach out and ask us about that, but let's sort of hit the high level. Does that sound like a good idea?
Fantastic. And the reason why we feel that market is shifting is because the year-to-date new listings in the greater Atlanta area has gone up by about 10%. We now have 39,000 houses that hit the market in the past year-to-date, and about 6,684 houses hit the market just in June in the greater Atlanta area. So there has been a huge increase in inventory, and we feel like buyers can ask for and kind of negotiate with sellers to get a better deal in the purchase and sales agreement. And we'll tell you exactly where to plug what in to help you be a better buyer in today's market.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. Okay, so I guess at first, at the very top, we have the obviously legal description, and that nothing changes there as far as the market goes. But as we get to the second section, it talks about purchase price, and obviously there. So have you found that it's in certain areas you might be able to get ask for a little more of a discount in the purchase price?
Absolutely. We've seen houses be discounted by at least 8 to 10% in certain areas in the North Atlanta area. And I feel like point number 2 in the purchase and sales agreement, point number 3 tie in so well together because it's not just about the purchase price, it's also the seller paid closing costs, which factor into how a buyer feels about making an offer. So a lot of sellers are offering these seller concessions.
Yeah, and maybe to give some of our folks some context, when you're purchasing a home, the closing costs combined with the escrow for taxes comes out to be about roughly 3% when you look at it all together. And so when we were back in 2021 and the first half of 2022, remember we were just coming out of COVID and the market was so strong, if you put some closing costs in there, you're never going to get your offer accepted. Isn't that right?
Absolutely. And that brings us to the closing date and possession. Right back then, we were allowing sellers to keep possession of the house for like a month after closing because sellers were putting the house on the market and they did not know where they were going, and they would start looking for a house after they got the house under contract. Yeah. So that was a big incentive for sellers to accept an offer because the buyer would allow them to stay after closing.
A flexible closing date and stay after. Yeah, absolutely right.
But typically in today's market, you definitely want to close on a date and take possession the same day.
Yeah, I think that's the wise thing to do, right? Ideally, you want the seller to be already out. It just helps avoid certain problems that can crop up.
And if you are allowing the seller to stay after closing, make sure that you keep a key with you or you have one access apparatus with you, because that comes with the contract. Is when you close, you get a key or a fob or a garage door opener at closing.
And I know certainly when I was writing some of those offers back in 2021, et cetera, we would let the seller stay for free sometimes for up to a month or what have you as an extra incentive. But maybe today, if we did allow the seller to stay, we might expect them to pay sort of a fair market rent.
Absolutely. And please, this was something that happened in one of my closings. My seller was allowed to stay, but the buyers didn't realize that the insurance would be the homeowner's insurance, and there would be like a gap insurance in between the time when the sellers would continue staying in the house and the buyers had the homeowner's insurance, while my sellers ended up taking renter's insurance for their same property.
Yeah, that's a great tip because, they do need to watch out for that. Absolutely.
Now, the holder of earnest money could be the law firm, which is going to close the property.
Yeah, or the brokerage.
Yeah,
buyer's brokerage. And the one area there that I know certainly I increased the earnest money on certain offers back when we were really competitive. And I think now, today, you can probably try to whittle that down.
To the
And I
1%?
often try to do it at 1%, and a lot of agents will still allow that to go through, although you do run occasionally into that 2% kind of minimum threshold. But I would start at 1% because it's, then you have some money that you could walk away from if the world goes haywire and you were already past all of your contingencies and you had no other way out of a contract. Maybe a quick thing I can point out that about this is, if you're in a contract, a buyer and seller, it is not, the seller doesn't have the option to cancel the contract. And if they did breach the contract, the buyer could sue for specific performance and other damages. And so it could be quite expensive for that seller. So the thing to keep in mind here on the buyer side, the buyer is, if they walked away in the due diligence period, then they owe nothing, right? So they're in the driver's seat with a lot of leverage, and they don't have to worry about the seller canceling the contract if they make a request. But the buyer, if he walks away from his earnest money and he put down 1%, so you've got it would still hurt, but I mean, if you only had $5,000 down on a $500,000 house, you could walk away if you had to. And the seller is not allowed to sue you. That is the complete damages that the seller is going to receive. So it's something I think for the buyers to keep in mind.
Very interesting. Now, the earnest money, I always liken the earnest money that the buyer gives and holds in deposit with either the closing attorney or the brokerage as like an engagement ring, because the buyer and the seller are now in a relationship, and the earnest money is the ring that one party gives to the other as like a trust, saying that you're off the market, I'm off the market, and now all we need to do is make sure that we reach the closing table. And the earnest money is typically 1%, but it could go up to 2 to 3% depending on how big you want the diamond to be.
Yeah, so if you want to impress, I guess, your partner, you get them a big diamond. Just like you impress the seller, you might give them a lot of earnest money.
Absolutely.
That's a great, honestly, I have not heard that one. That's a great little way to look at it.
Yes, and the earnest money belongs to the buyer. So
that's correct.
If and they get it back at closing as the closing costs, or they could use it towards the down payment, but it belongs to the buyer and the seller has no claim over it. Yeah, unless all the contingencies are over and then the buyer decides to walk away.
That's correct. Yeah, that's correct.
Perfect. And now the inspection and due diligence. There is something which is point number 8 in the purchase and sales contract.
Yeah, so this is probably one of the big things that's changed, I suppose, right? When we were in the froth of the market, we had to keep that just as short as possible. And we even had times, I had a client one time, we had no inspections. We just said, we're taking it. And so today, I think we have maybe a little more flexibility where we can ask for a little bit more time to take a good look at it. And,
Are you thinking maybe 5 days? Because when I was back in the business, it used to be 7 days,
right,
maybe
exactly.
even 14 days, and it dropped to 2 days.
Right. I think a lot of agents still like it at 5 days, but I think you can push that to 7, especially if you give them a little story of like, well, we're going to be out of town, or we hit
the weekend.
Yeah, and we're coming up, or you can say maybe 5 business days or something that gives you 7 days. I think, that you're much more likely to get that through today than you were, like you say, a few years ago.
And these days, inspectors are not that busy. So you can't use that excuse anymore,
right.
saying that my inspector is busy, because the way the market's shifting, inspectors are also hurting for business.
Yeah, that's true. Absolutely.
All right. Now, there was this lead-based paint line item in there at point number 9, and these were for houses built before 1978. Now, we don't see too many houses built before 1978 in the North Fulton, South Forsyth area. We do sometimes.
Once in a while in Roswell, we might get an occasional one, but that's more for like an in-town type of property. Yeah. So there's not much change there. I think obviously those disclosures have to be made. It's that's federal law that they have to be disclosed if it was built prior to 1978.
Because of the lead-based.
Because of the possible lead-based paint there, absolutely.
Perfect. And now the point number 10 is about the brokerage relationships, where you are being represented by your agent either as a client or a customer. And point number 11 talks about the time limit of the offer when the time expires. Now, it is so important in real estate contracts to adhere to time limits because time is of the essence. Every minute is important. Like if you have a time expiration for 11 o'clock, you cannot go up to 11:01 because your offer has expired at 11 o'clock.
Yeah, and I think it's a great thing that you point that out. Let's just talk about that a little bit more, especially as it pertains to due diligence. Because let's say we have made a request of the seller and we said, hey, we want you to, let's just say, give us $3,000 as compensation for these items. And the clock is ticking, and let's say it's going to run out at 9 p.m. that evening, and you haven't heard from the seller yet. Your problem as a buyer is you really only have an option of you terminate the contract or you're accepting it as is with that, right? And so you really do have to pay attention, and so you don't let your agent overlook that.
Absolutely.
That's a big problem, right?
I have seen amendment to address concerns, which is a topic we'll talk of in a different episode, come in with a termination letter attached to them saying that if you don't accept these, or if by chance we go over the time limit because it's the holidays, you're out of town, or one party has not signed it, the termination letter comes with it. And it says that if you don't sign it, it gets terminated unilaterally.
Yeah.
But also, it protects you as a buyer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. So now, like you said, we probably don't have time to go through all the exhibits and special stipulations that we could get into, I suppose, right?
Absolutely. But, rest assured that all the boring lines in there are to protect you as a buyer and a seller in the state of Georgia. So pages number 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, are disclosures and clauses which protect you and all parties involved in the real estate transaction, from any legalities. And it just kind of, whenever you have time, just go over them. Now we'll jump straight to page number 9, which talks about the exhibits and addendums, but maybe we'll leave the exhibits for another day, Jeff, and talk about something which is down at the bottom, the special stipulations.
Yeah, we could do that. So the special stipulations is kind of a free-form area where you could ask for anything. You'd ask for their dog. Probably not a good idea, but you could do it, right? Haven't had that one happen. Yeah. But you can pretty much put anything in there that you want, and as long as it's agreed to, it becomes part of the contract. So what are the kind of things that you think that we could have as special stipulations in there now, Meesha, that maybe we couldn't when the market was a little tighter for the sellers?
Like you said, we could ask for not really the moon, but yes. Typically, to be effective in your special stipulations, you want a clean contract. You don't want to ask for too much because then your offer gets to go to the bottom of the pile and your offer will be overlooked as somebody who was being unrealistic in their needs. Special stipulation, I would say keep it clean, maybe ask for a home warranty. You've already been to the house, you saw during the first visit to the house that it had an old water heater. It may have another 3, 4, 5 years to go. Ask for a home warranty, which pretty much protects all the components in the house, especially the electrical, the plumbing, the water heater, the appliances. A second thing, which may not be a bad idea to ask for, would be a professional home cleaning, because according to the contract, the house has to be broom swept. Now, everyone's idea of broom swept is different. Yeah. So I would definitely ask for a professional home cleaning and ask for receipts at the closing table, which will let you know that there was proof that it was cleaned.
Okay, I think that's a good idea.
Any things that you would ask for, Jeff?
Well, I think, it's, it would go on a different form, but, if there's some personal property, you could have a personal property agreement in. We weren't able to really ask for much before, but let's say there's a washer and dryer there that they weren't planning to leave, and it is personal property in Georgia. You could ask for something like that to be included in the agreement. Like you said, we put that on a bill of sale, but I think that's something that you can dip your toe into, and what you really need to find out, I think, from your agent that you're working with, you really need them to ask, are we going to be in a multiple offer situation? Is that possible or likely? Some agents, you can tell they're telling the truth. Other ones, it's hard to tell, right? But if you're not going to be in a multiple offer situation, you have a much more flexibility of asking for some of these things. Also, if the home has been on the market for 50 days already, and maybe they have had no price reduction, and especially if the home is vacant, right? There's a lot of motivation, they're losing money each month, then they're going to be much more likely to do something as opposed to a property where you have, maybe a few other offers coming in and it's the first weekend. You're not going to, it's going to be right, you have to use a little common sense. Then you can't ask for the moon. You're not going to win that offer, right?
Yes. Absolutely. So, and then, when I used to work in South Carolina, it was very interesting. We had to ask for a clear termite letter that you don't have to do in Georgia, even though we have a lot of termite.
But not anymore.
Not anymore. But, that might be something. If it's not, if the house does not have a termite bond already, it may not be a bad idea to ask for a clear termite letter.
I think that's a great idea. You absolutely want to do that.
Put it in the special stipulations. Yeah. And now we come to the final page of the contract, which is where you will sign as a buyer. Whoever else is signing on the contract will sign with them. Your agent will sign at the bottom to offer that purchase and sales agreement to the seller.
Yeah, so I think it was a good sort of high-level look at this, and if folks have any questions, and if we sounded like we were talking gibberish or something, you have questions, give us a ring. We're happy to talk to you about it, maybe your situation in particular.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we will do another episode about exhibits, which are on page number 9, to talk about backup agreements, the buyer brokerage compensation, which has been a huge talking point amongst agents, sellers, and buyers, and the other exhibits and addenda that you could add to the contract. But yes, if you have any questions as a buyer in a state of Georgia and have questions about the contract or anything related to that, reach out to Jeff or Meesha Rawal, and we'd be very happy to answer any questions.